welcome to part 2 of the Magic Factory 1/48 scale A4M Skyhawk build. So at the end of part 1 we dry fitted the fuselage, made sure everything fit, and now it's turning our attention to finishing the cockpit tub off. So it's assembled now with the basic painting done. Needs a little bit of weathering, but it's our time to start focusing on our aftermarket that we're using. In order to check that everything fitted as far as the canopy in the previous part, I did actually remove the Erad look set from its 3D printed supports, and they were just quite simply removed from there. And as you probably agree, those instrument panels are pretty good, something I couldn't paint, and for the money and the time it's a good time saving expense. So this is a direct replacement of the kit part. So all we're going to do is just push this home, and the fit is really good, and that's it in place. So we know that we're happy that that fits. So to give us some extra room, we'll remove that, and then we're going to look at the Quinta Studio side consoles. So we do also get seat belts with this, so we'll look at those later. Now again, these are quite well printed, far better than I could hand paint. I think the Quinta product though is really quite expensive for what you actually get, certainly for some of the bigger jets and two-seaters. I mean, you're looking at upwards of £40. These are really well printed again, far better than I could do, certainly as my eyesight and age is getting on a bit. So we're just going to remove this section because we don't need the instrument panel, and we're just going to simply dip these in our decal water, and we're going to wait a few seconds. Now just to aid their adhesion, we're going to use a tiny bit of micro crystal clear, any PVA will do, and I'm just going to literally put a little bit on each of those side consoles, like so. Just move this about now so we don't end up with a blob. And this is just to make sure that the Quinta product never lifts. And just like a decal, we're just going to slide that into place like so. On camera. Hopefully that focused. And then we're going to repeat for the other side, making sure it all beds down quite nicely. And I don't use a cotton bud with these because there is raised detail, and you know that it's going to end up trapped fibres in the raised detail. And when we pop this Erad instrument panel into place, that is our completed cockpit in the space of 5 minutes. So we're just going to leave that to dry. Just at this point I am going to check that our ejector seat still slides down the rails and doesn't catch on any of the Quinta parts, which is looking to be a little bit tight on this side. And they're we go, that's now ready to be glued in place on the fuselage, and we can get those fuselage halves joined together. So work continues on our Magic Factory Skyhawk, and I've undone the tape and we've got the fuselage halves dry, and the seams are very good. There's very little work to do there. So I was putting off joining this nose on, and as we know from the instruction booklet, it's in two parts, and this forward section here can be posed open and the nose cone itself can be then posed open. So I was dreading this bit because it's going to make or break this model, and I'm really pleased to report that the join of the first section of the nose to the fuselage is perfect on both sides, and very little remedial work is going to be required there. I did get a bit of a seam up the nose, but we'll deal with that when we get to the filling primer stages of the model, and we can have a look at this under some paint and just get that looking a little bit better. Now the next stage was to close these access panels, and unfortunately this is where things start to go wrong, as expected. As always with a model that's designed to have various panels open, it's going to be a pain in the backside to get them closed. Now, spurred on by Spencer Pollard's wonderful images on his Facebook page over the weekend, I bit the bullet and went up in here, dived straight in. I thought I'm not going to film it because I didn't want the added pressure of trying to get it looking right on film, and everything's come out reasonable for this stage of the build. By that I mean the panels are slightly raised and they're slightly flush. Slightly raised with the surface and not flush with the surface, and I don't think we're going to overcome that fully, but at least they look half decent in the closed position. I elected not to add any of the bulkhead or any of the internals, and a quick test fit of the final nose cone reveals quite a nice join there. It will need just a little bit of filler just at the top to hide the exaggerated hinges. So looking good. So we're going to turn our attention to the rear of the model now and get this done before we concentrate on the wings. So we're picking the build up at stage 11, and we're going to be looking at this tail assembly, and also we've got a little sort of in focus view here saying we need to remove something from parts E30 and E14. So I'll get these parts off the sprue and let's have a look at what we need to do. So I think with any modern kit, these single side nippers are a must now, and make short work of removing parts from the sprue with a lovely clean cut, and don't leave much to actually clean up. So we'll dry fit these and see what occurs. So I'll just remove what is left of those little attachment points. Now we are going to have to pay attention to this surface here because we have the fin tip and the fin top going on. So we'll just make sure that we've got no trace of any of those attachment points there. They go together really well. A little bit of a scar there which needs to be taken care of. To be careful not to sand too much, otherwise we'll end up having to put a bit of Mr. Surfacer in there. So that all looks good. Let's not forget that one. And then it goes into the tail, to the fuselage recess, like so, and then we've obviously got a bit extension that goes on there, and we've got the hump, so it is starting to take shape now. So just jumping ahead, I'm not going to do that, not going to attach the rudder unless we have to, which I'm just checking here, which I think we can add that later. So let's have a look at this moving tail section here. So we need a grommet Q3. So we're about to use some of these rubber parts for the first time. So I have ordered some res kit wheels for this. I won't be using those tyres. So this gets sandwiched in between there. And then these are glued together. So I think we can safely go ahead and do that. But I think before I do that, we're going to check this late fin top. Just fits in there nicely. So you want H3 and H4. And the method with this, checking the fit now, is that if it's not such a good fit, we can do what we did with the fuselage halves and build up a single section. So I think what I will do is I'll glue those in place now before I glue the tail together. Just clean them up, because I can work from the inside, preserving the panel line on the outside. Down a bit, just to bite. Right, so, and that way we preserve that panel line. So all looks good there, so we'll introduce some glue to the seam of the tail. I'm going to open it. And just to make this permanent. Making sure everything lines up well. The glue is still soft, making sure everything is straight and true. I just need a clamp on there, so I just utilised Tamiya paint clips for this. And there we go. So we will need a bit of Mr. Surfacer in there, I think, just to make that seam look like the others. And then we shall just check the fit. That's perfect slotting fit with there. And then moving on from this section, what we're going to be looking at doing is getting this avionics hump on board as well. So it'll look something like that. Now I do confess, I've been a little bit lazy with the camera, but we haven't progressed a lot since the last previous section. So we've now got the tail attached to the model and all looking good. And we've fitted the appendage, if you like, which is the outer part of the jet exhaust, and the fairing above. The fit is not brilliant. It's a little bit off on the undersurface, but because that's a different colour, when we mask and spray that, that'll draw the eye away. So I've blended it in slightly, but we've not done too much work at it at this point. And we do have another fine seam from the moulding process just to remove on each side here. And as Spencer Pollard pointed out, I'd missed one down the nose, so thanks for the heads up, Spence. I'll have a chat next time I see you about that, but thank you. That's what modelling's all about. That's what Facebook and social media is about. I completely missed missed these, and you know, it would have come apparent under the primer stages, but it's a lot easier to just whip round with that sanding stick while we were filling that horrible seam that we had down the nose. Filled the seam quite simply, a bit boring to watch on camera, but basically piece of masking tape down each side of the fault, smear of Tamiya putty left overnight to dry, fine sanding sponge just to knock it back, job's done, coat of primer, sorted. Talking of joint lines, another one that I'd picked up watching some YouTube videos was on the avionics hump, and this is just in the process, as you can see there, of having those seam lines eradicated. Same process has been employed, masked each side of the fault, added putty, and then coated in primer. This is a little bit more work in progress. We need to add some aerials in the vents. Thought I'd do that at this point, and then we'll get the final finish on that. The fit is a little bit sloppy, I will be honest. So we've got a seam along there we're going to need to take care of, and a little bit of a gap there, but nothing major. It's just going to be the old trick with the Mr. Surfacer and the IPA straight away, just to remove the excess. So all in all, it's starting to take shape, starting to look a bit like a Skyhawk. Now I've managed to accumulate quite a little bin of parts. So we have the tail section, and these were made up of two parts glued together with the elevator in place, ×2, and the rudder. And then we have this moving tail plane that goes through one side into that rubber grommet that we placed in there. Now this part was floating loose, and it has got a slight tear in the plastic which will need to be repaired. The other one pushes in and interlocks from the other side, but the fit isn't terribly brilliant, to be honest. And then each of these tail surfaces locate in the holes. Good strong locating holes in these. So I'm not going to be having the tail plane moving, but as you can, on the model it does, and you can pose it slightly as true to life. I'm just going to glue it all in place. And then just to finish off, the rudder, which looks as though it can't be added at the completion of the tail, as it shows it in the instructions as having those hinges go through, can be if you add it at an angle later on. So that's the rear end pretty much done. We need to get this nose done, so what we'll do is we're going to have to build up the optics that sit behind in this section. But again, there's going to be a tiny little bit more work to do on this nose before we can sign off on that, because we're just going to have to blend those exaggerated hinges in, like we said previously. So quite happy with how it's progressing. So we're going to have a look at doing some of these other bits and pieces. I'll just disassemble this, and I'll go and get my caffeine injection, and we'll see you back at the bench. So I've got my coffee. This time it's in the rather battered and weary looking Airfix cup. They don't do too well in the dishwasher, but cheers. And we're going to see work carry on the avionics hump. So again, you need to watch what you're doing and follow the instructions closely. So we need to open up holes for the aerials. We need to add the beacon, vent and aerials. Why we need to fit U67 is beyond me, because when you put the hump in place, it totally covers that area, so don't bother with U67 going in there. All in all, not a massive amount to do, and then we can get more primer on once we've worked these panels, and we can get that attached to the fuselage. So we need U57. So the U sprue seems to be one that holds quite a lot of the smaller bits in this kit. So we've got these single blade nippers. These are only cheap ones, and so far they seem to be more than up for the job. I'm not going to be paying £50 for a pair of God hands. These do equally as well, and especially the way that I seem to break tools. So I'm going to certainly buy a few pairs of those. I think they were from Amazon for the pricely sum of £12. And I think I got them in the last years. I know I've had them a while. I think I got them in Black Friday sale. So we've just trimmed the parts off, making sure we get this the correct way round. So that's the front that way, and it's saying that it's going in like so. Now I'm hoping that this wasn't the case of we needed to join this before we join the halves together, otherwise I'd have a little bit of an issue, or whether it's just a tight fit. It's just a tight fit. So that's pushed in place. Wherever possible, work from the back of the parts. We're still going to need a little more Mr. Surfacer on this one, I think. But that's that added, and we're just going to check the correct orientation. I think it'll only go in one way anyway, and that it is smooth and flush. And I haven't got a step which looks slightly off centre to that side. And at the rear. Not going to add the beacon at this point. That's going to be the last thing to go on the model. Just have a slurp of coffee. For those that don't know, my workshop is in the loft, and at this time of year it gets a bit chilly up here, so we always have a warm drink and the heater on. So that's looking good. And we can add, we've got the aerials now. I think they're going to get broken, so we'll add those in the when we've got the spine on the model. And also it's going to aid just working on this little seam that's still coming back here. This bit looks okay, it's just had primer on it, but I think we need to do a little bit of work in this area. So we want U3 times 2. So we've got parts U3, and they just need a little clean up there so that they'll sit flush. I'm sure there could have been a better way of mounting the sprue gates on these parts. Magic Factory, they are very small. And to have a lip where on the mating surface is a little bit of a pain, to say the least, because you know what's going to happen with these at some point. They're going to ping off into the world of major lost parts and the carpet monster. So we're just taking our time there, just so that we get the best fit at this stage that we can. Just checking the other one. And we're now in a position to add these to our waiting parts. So again, being pretty careful that these don't ping off. I'm going to try and add them to their cutout. Now they seem to be a little bit on the large side, so let's have a look. And they certainly don't want to go in the hole. And that one's in place. And just coming in from the bottom, touch of extra thin. And a little nudge from the tweezers, just making sure we've got it in the right location and that it is sitting correctly. So all's good. So quite fiddly at times, but the end result should look good with the extra parts, because it means that they are hollow and not just moulded on like some. And that just gives a more pleasing, realistic look to the model. There we go. So we've added a few more parts there, so I think at this stage I'm going to leave this still off the model until I've got these seams to my satisfaction. It's just that I don't want to be putting coats and coats of primer on, building it up, and then lose the detail on the fuselage. So we've just got the two aerials, which I've drilled the holes out for, and the navigation lamp or the position indicator on the spine there. Like we said, we'll add that at the end. So whenever I've completed a section of the build, if there's anything left, I get a red Sharpie and I add a number of dots to correspond to what needs doing. So this time we've got the beacon and the two aerials, so we'll have 3 red dots, and that's just for me to say that there's 3 parts still outstanding in that section. It's on to air brake spoilers, flaps and what have you next. So this will be coming up in part 3 when we build up the wing section and add that to the fuselage. Still got a few bits and pieces to go there underneath, but it's all underneath, so that's for future parts. But the section that we're now interested in is this whole nose section. Now, like I hinted at previously, I missed all this internal detail out when I was attaching the nose to the model. The fit is absolutely perfect, like we've seen, but we do need to put some of the smaller items in the later nose, because it's got the targeting equipment and everything in there. So it's this one that we're looking at, and then we can add that to the nose. We can put nose weight in, check the centre of gravity, etc. Magic Factory do provide nose weight. I'm just going to use my traditional lead, and we'll see how we go with that. Once we've got that, we can take that lower wing section in place, find out where the wheel bays locate, find the centre of gravity. Just take that rudder off before we lose it, and then we can get that nose section on. Once the nose section's on, I'm going to mask off the intakes, and I've decided to add those intake lips before the main camouflage colours go on. Now this is going to be in a 3-tone tactical grey or tactical paint scheme, TPS, similar to the Tomcat. So I'm not going to have the red warning areas on the intake lips, so I'd rather get those fitted to the model. We're going to look at whether the canopy is a good enough fit of the cockpit parts to leave them, or whether they're good and will need work to blend the windscreen in, and if so, we'll add that and mask that up. Now masks do come in the kit, so it'd be interesting to see if they are die cut. And overall I think we've got a reasonable job on the nose. Bear in mind those panels were all open. So looking at the section for the late version, we need S1, H7 and D10. So we'll build up this section, and I think we'll just paint it black, stick a bit of clear blue in the end to represent the camera lens. So you're not going to see a great amount in there. So we want S1, S1 is actually on the clear sprue, so we'll just nip that off. So I'm just thinking whether we drop a bit of clear blue on the inside of that part. So we'll have a look at that in a sec. We'll see how much is visible. It's got a very small lens there at the top. And I'm sure I've got a punch there that I could make a little mask for that, spray that back black and add the blue from behind, which when you look through that clear lens on the nose, it's going to add just a little bit of interest to say that there is something actually there. So let's start cleaning these parts up. Okay, so this one does locate underneath. So let's just remove the attachment point there. Doesn't fit quite as well as maybe I would like, and that's because just here there is the remnant of the sprue attachment point. That's just been whittled away, so we should find that that fits better in there now, which it does. That's that added. Looking at H8 here is just asking to get broken off, so we'll pop that in the tray of bits. And the nose can go back in there for safekeeping, and we need, so this is part D10. Now we've just removed it from the sprue, so I'm just going to get rid of these attachment points. Make sure there's no remains of those left. And this is sort of an electrical box, but the detail on there is adequate if you wanted to open the nose. So we're looking, it's got the vents to the top, we've got the cutout there, vents to the top, so that's going to sit in there, which it clearly doesn't want to do. So we make sure we get it the right way around, which we have now. So the two little knobs or switches face outwards. And then our clear part's going to go on here. We'll find the key, there we go. So we'll get these painted up, we'll look at making dye mask, punch mask for that lens, and then this whole assembly is going to slide inside the nose like that, which gives us something to view when we're looking through that clear nose cap, and it doesn't affect the fit at all. So I'm going to get to the spray bay, do that, and we'll come back and have a look at the finished results. So as we draw to an end of build stage 2, or part 2 of the video build, we've got ourselves in quite a good position. So that nose has now gone on. Let's take that spine off for a second. So the nose has now gone on, and it's pretty much where I want it to be. but quite happy with the work I've done on the nose. The rivet detail hasn't been eradicated altogether, so what we'll do is when the plastic and the paint and everything is dry, we'll just come in there with our needle in the pin vise and just go through and mark those again, just to make them stand out a little bit more before we put another coat of primer and the top coats on. So again, the panels, they're okay actually. They're a little bit raised, a little bit bulged, but with weathering, and these airframes were quite weathered, we can probably draw the eye away from those. And we've punched a 5mm disc out of Tamiya tape just to hide that camera work that we did. So all in all, it's coming along quite well. But the problem area that I am having is this spine for some reason. So I've just been working on this, and we've got this bit more or less right, but we've still got a seam there. The vent's gone in faultlessly, so that's fine. We've just got a very faint line there, and then we're working our way this way just to get that perfect, as it's going to be really visible on the completed build. So that's it for part 2. So hopefully you'll come back and join me in part 3. You're always welcome. So until then, please everybody, look after yourselves, stay well and take care.